Hey everyone, Alex Williams here for a live stream from DevOps World. The keynotes have started, the discussions are beginning, and I get to be here with a few guests to discuss what's happening, what are some of the major themes at the event. My colleague, B. Cameron Gain of the New Stack. Hello, B. Cameron Gain.
Hello, Alex. Good morning.
Good to see you from France. He's over there in France. And Sean Ahmed of CloudBees. Hi, Sean.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Sean is Senior Vice President and General Manager of Software Delivery Automation Group at CloudBees. And Daniel Ritchie.
Hello.
Hey, Daniel. Great to see you here. Now, Sean, you're in LA. Daniel, you're in Denver. Is that right?
That's correct.
That's
awesome.
Right.
And Daniel is a distinguished engineer at Broad Ridge. And I just want to get right into it. The keynotes have started. And there are some of the topics that I thought were interesting just to get going. I was able to catch the keynote with Sasha. He talks a lot about accelerated resiliency and how one thing he said, we assume things will work and then get frustrated when they don't. I think we've all been there before. And the irony now is that it's not an iceberg anymore that you have to worry about. It's these nanometer viruses. So that was another interesting point I thought he had to say. The single point of failure, the issues with single points of failure, and how you need to be automated, connected, and resilient. And so that's just starting off with Sasha. And then Sean, you had some things to say about resiliency and following up and how to avoid that single point of failure. What were you trying to say there, Sean?
Well, I think one of the more important things in these times is that given just the remote nature of how we work, the fact that that is now a part of our reality, not just for the short term, but in the long term, resiliency at the single point of failure is one we have to really pay close attention to, because it's very small places in this value chain where you might have a single point of failure or a choke point. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to deliver innovation to market really fast. And these teams can't pop into each other's rooms. They can't just, have a conversation over from one cube to another, an office and so on. And we're sitting, hundreds and thousands of miles apart. And via technology, we can always connect with each other. It's that idea that information, knowledge about how that value moves left through right in the value chain is now not as easily accessible. It's in people's heads, and people have lives. You've got time zones to worry about. You've got different tools you're working on and processes that are disconnected. And you recognize and realize very quickly that if you don't have that knowledge, or you don't know what the next step is, or it's in somebody's head, or locked away in a process, or locked away in some sort of tool, and these things are not connected, you're essentially facing that single point of failure where you need to deliver something and it's like you're right there, but oh gosh, we can't move forward because what happens next? And you haven't knowledge ruled that. You haven't codified that knowledge. You haven't automated potentially that rote manual task. So that's kind of what I'm talking about when I say a single point of failure, whether it's a person, whether it's a tool, it's a process, it's data, wherever it may be, they exist across your entire environment, and finding them and trying to record what that is and putting it into rules or automation or connecting it together essentially avoids some of those problems from happening. So, you don't have value stuck in your value chain and not being able to get it to market as fast as you desire. So that's kind of what I was hinting at the keynote.
On a more micro level, Sean, is there, or what platform or platforms should we take into account when we're really trying to get past these hurdles of so-called single point of failures? What platforms are we talking about?
I think there's two kind of platforms you definitely want to look into. One is a software delivery automation platform. I think that builds sort of the ground level basis for the backbone in the business, right? This is where you automate. This is where you connect. This is where you orchestrate. all of your software in the software delivery lifecycle. This is about everything that happens from an idea all the way to successfully releasing it on a Friday and knowing you don't have to roll back over the weekend, and sort of having the approvals and having a fully audit ready pipeline, and understanding that these have to be connected. Companies will have multitude of pipelines, so being able to automate and connect it, that's one layer. We kind of think of that as a software delivery automation. But then there's the other platform, and that's the platform for continuously monitoring it, looking at the efficiency, looking at the optimize. Kind of like there's folks that build things, and then there's folks within your organization that likely are part of manage the building of the thing. And they're looking at that and trying to say, okay, well, how do we continuously find where the bottlenecks are? Where do we continuously optimize our process? And we kind of think of that as a software delivery management platform. I think both of those are critical aspects of the world that we live in today.
So that's where you would bring in, that's how you're able to bring in, say, the team leaders, and maybe even the product managers, so they have more access to monitor exactly what's happening, for example.
Exactly.
And that's
exactly.
Hence the furthering DevOps culture, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. We think of every organization to build resiliency, which was the topic of this keynote. When we think about, how do you build resiliency, part of that is to be able to progressively deliver the software, right? And be able to take a feature as an example and be able to deliver that feature, but control it in such a way that it's decoupled from the entire deployment. That gives you faster feedback loops. You want to build better software. You want to get it out there faster. So technologies like feature toggling and feature flags and things like that, those are the types of technologies that essentially just sort of brings product manager or product owners together with engineering to really collaborate in a really conducive way towards bringing software that is really great to market. This is, looking at the features overall life cycle and being able to get the right research in place, get the right customers involved, talk about what that feature needs to do, be able to release it such that it doesn't impact or afflict your sort of target environment or production environment from negative afflictions, and having to roll back everything. But in fact, being able to do something like a simple thing, like to say, we released a feature, we tried it, we tested it, experimented with it, it's ready, not ready, but we can always toggle, turn it off. That's really the state, I think, of progressive delivery that brings it together. So you're exactly right, Cameron. I couldn't agree more. It's not about just one group, but there's multitude of organization teams and individuals that are involved in the process of delivering successfully software to the market. And that's why all of these teams being more connected as opposed to siloed is a critical aspect of not having a single point of failure, at least to me.
Sorry, just going to ask a follow-up question. Sean, I don't know at what point you came in, but would you say that, would you have any examples of how you've been able to bring everybody into the fold, so to speak? And I imagine that's still an ongoing goal as well. But I'm assuming that you're more, as things as you progress, more stakeholders are becoming involved in your processes. Is that correct? For example, stakeholders being the engineers, maybe even the business team leaders, et cetera. Is that
Bruce? Was that the question for Daniel or for me?
Yeah. That was actually as a follow-up question for Daniel. Forgive me.
Oh, okay. All right. I just want to make sure.
Well, I'll tie back something that Sean said earlier. I think that a lot of times we look at, how do we bring together all of these different aspects? And I loved Sean's comment around the decision that CloudBees made to make this more inclusive and be able to bring together the different offerings. I think it's actually a differentiator that is not talked about a whole lot. We have so much change that's happening in this space. Technology is, it's unbelievable. I mean, if you look at, the Cloud Native Foundation and the number of things they have in the pipeline and the excitement that we've seen come out of those types of things so far, we know more of that's going to happen, but we don't often think of that beyond the technology. I mean, the reality is everything that we're doing and the excitement that we have is not just about delivering the latest, container-based or serverless or whatever it is. The reality is there's a business side of this, and they're modernizing the way that we're interacting with clients and what we're delivering to our clients. So being able to include them, I think, and expanding beyond just these, infinitely growing disparate components, and being able to say it's not just the technology, but it's also the business folks and these other aspects that need to come together and make this possible. I think that's really an essential aspect of what's happening here.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree.
And it looks like I've lost video again here. Do you have me on audio at least?
I can hear you, Daniel.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Alex, you might be talking, but you're on mute.
Oh, there we go. We're seeing it all here today. Yeah, we lost Daniel there for a bit, and now we got him back, and now we're just having him on audio. So it's the bandwidth early morning, I think, on the West Coast is always a challenge. But I wanted to just go back to some of the other keynotes. We saw Buffy Gresh of CloudBees speak, and we also heard Aparna Singh of Google speak. And there was one thing I love to hear from Buffy, and she talked a lot about everything as code is your force multiplier. And you got to be careful of the unexpected extremes. And DevOps in a box is a bit like drinking wine from a box. You get what you get.
It's I love that bit that she added to her keynote. I have to admit, it's funny every time I hear it. It's really interesting. It's for us at CloudBees, we've always had from the beginning this point of view of the world that DevOps is about embracing diversity in every form, shape that comes. And it's about bringing together all of the best things and working together, and that includes the very technologies. So that's been part of our DNA, Alex, from the very get-go. And what do I mean by that? Well, there's no doubt that building software is not easy. And there's a lot of people that play different roles in the process. There's different teams that use different tools. And over time, the DevOps tool chain can grow and it becomes very big. And the idea that we discussed, a few years back, even at CloudBees, was what does that really mean? Like, if you're to do DevOps really great, do you replace the tool chain? Or is it all about embracing the tool chain? And because we think everybody needs to build a software delivery automation backbone. We think everybody needs to build a software delivery management backbone. And if these things are to be built and we're to be successful with it, is the game about replacing them and creating a box that you live in? Or is it about embracing all those tools, connecting them together? And we clearly fell on the embrace. We have to embrace those tools. They are purpose-built for specific things. Developers love them, product managers, QA folks, docs folks. I mean, you talk to people, they'll say we have our tools. Kind of like, Alex, you and I have our preference over email tool, which Google Sheet versus PowerPoint versus whatever. We have our choose, we have our suite setup. And what we realized is that suite setup to build software is what brings focus. And that focus comes from having the ability and the freedom to choose it. So our approach was embrace that diversity. We cannot build this backbone by replacing all the tools and technology people use, but it's all about bringing them, embracing them into the backbone and connecting that process. So we could live in both worlds. That's kind of like something Daniel and I talk a lot about when we've had the chance in the past is how important that becomes to those that are involved in the process of making software, that choice and freedom. So that's where that comment from Buffy comes from. It's not DevOps in the box. You kind of, if that's your approach, then you get what you then you get what you get. But Daniel, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Absolutely. Well, it's really presumptive to say that, you know, the DevOps in a box, this complete solution is everything that you could ever need, and you won't need to keep up with changes in technology. You know, I won't name names here, but I think of the company that offered a cloud abstraction, and they couldn't run on Kubernetes, right? And they got in trouble. There was a huge lawsuit because their clients said, "What do you mean you support all cloud platforms and Kubernetes isn't an option?" So to suggest that technology is perfect today and we have every aspect covered, you're going to get in trouble if you pretend that you've got this perfect solution. And maybe you do, right? Maybe based on everything that you have right now, you came up with the absolute ideal of how to do DevOps. But the reality is the needle's going to change, right? The goalposts are going to change because you're going to have to deliver something that nobody's ever heard of in 2 years, or some new technology is going to become available that enables you to be successful in ways that we can't imagine today.
So I want to make sure we have time to cover some of the other topics we discussed. Bruce, what are some of the topics in CI/CD or hot topics that we expect will come up at the show here?
Well, I'm thinking obviously, CloudBees has announced its new software delivery tools, for example, and these new platforms. But it's interesting just to kind of look at the context of, where are we now? I mean, before we were just a couple of years ago, we were still discussing DevOps culture, et cetera. And now we've kind of progressed beyond just figuring out how to manage Jenkins, how to deal with some of the, excuse me for saying, problematic issues some people have experienced, but by following the processes now, example, that those days are quite behind us. And at the same time, we're looking at, as you discussed before, kind of orchestrating everything in a more of a single platform to give everybody all the stakeholders visibility into what DevOps is working on. And again, stakeholders being not just the developers, but really in doing the nitty gritty of the CI/CD, but the engineers, the product managers, everybody, and actually being able to orchestrate that and monitor that at the same time with this new platform. So I think that's a key dynamic now. And would you agree? And why or why not?
I totally
and
agree.
Daniel, excuse me. And Daniel, I'd really like to hear what your thoughts are. Like, where are we right now in DevOps?
The comment about, integration, I think, is so key to all of this. And when it comes to the different pieces of the software delivery automation that are in place today, I mean, everybody is kind of in the middle of a rat race, right? All these different products, different companies, et cetera. And, we have tools, obviously, that CloudBees has offered for a very long time. And this move into software delivery management, right? This idea that we're going to deliver software, but it goes beyond each of these automated components. I think right now that expansion we're expanding into a horizon that's really pushing the edge in a way that is defining the future of DevOps, right? I think, even if you go back to the very early thinking around DevOps, the words Dev and Ops were used, but really we were just talking about two groups that historically had challenges and friction working together. And here's this utopia of Dev and Ops now blurring the lines, right? Bringing down the wall in between these two groups that things get thrown over to. Well, then you hear about, BizSecops or DevBizSecops or whatever, tag on this extra piece of this. But the reality is we're just talking about integrating these other components, which historically have not had a seat at the table. So giving all of these different players an opportunity to interact together, I think that's my idea anyways, of the idea behind SDM, software delivery management, to say everyone has a seat at the table because we are delivering this solution to our clients, and it's the integration of those different pieces. Well, that's not really happened very much. So I think that edge of discovery is where we are right now, and who knows what this is going to look like in a few years.
Yeah, that's just very clear. One of the things I would love to talk about is one of the things I heard in the keynotes was how accelerated things are becoming, and how with COVID, we are starting to see just more people reaching this elite status. Parnasinya interviewed a gentleman from an e-commerce company, Vendasta, I believe, and they provide e-commerce solutions to local companies. And they saw that their business dropped in April earlier this year during the first part of COVID, and then it jumped. It jumped in like upwards of 12% over the next few months, and now I think it's more stabilized. They had 2% growth previously prior to COVID, but it really speaks to this acceleration, doesn't it, Sean?
It really does. I think one of the things we've learned through this 9-month long pandemic is that life as we know it and the business processes that support it, or technologies, or our day-to-day, from buying groceries to simple whatever it may be, they have all changed significantly, and everybody in the business is finding ways to deliver what they used to deliver. And I wouldn't say that it was analog, but I would say in the business model, however they delivered their product or service before, that it has now have to be delivered in a different way. It has to be delivered with a great amount of digital integration. And in order to do that, or software-based integration, the best example I can give you is I happened to buy a new car. Our 11-year-old van had finally said enough. I have 3 kids, and my wife was due for a new car. And as we started really looking at what we were going to buy, we did end up buying a Tesla. And I thought it was absolutely incredible that my entire buying experience began on a phone. It ended in a browser. And I picked up the car from a parking lot with, I think, like 25 miles on it. And I had no human being ever in the entire process, in the buying process, that I had to personally even see, talk to, or anything like that. And my wife, just went in there from the app and turned the car on and so on. That is such a extreme example, I think, of digitally transforming the process of buying and selling cars. I ask myself all the time, what are these digital extreme transformations we may see as we go forward? I think we're just, as Daniel said, tip of the iceberg on some of these transformations we're going to see going into the future. And like that, I think software is going to be at the heart of driving those transformations, and how we interact with the world around ourselves in every aspect of it is going to see some prolonged or permanent change. And fundamentally, that's going to be delivered by engineers and ops folks and companies that are building really innovative software. So I'm excited about the future, but it presents itself a number of different challenges we're going to have to solve as we get there. But Daniel, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but that's kind of where I see the world going. And I hope I answered your question, Alex.
Sure. No, but Daniel, I wanted to ask you a quick question too, and maybe you can follow up on what Sean said as well. And how has Broadridge changed? How has Broadridge been affected by COVID? How have you looked at your software stack? I know you were more focused on DevOps prior to COVID, and you've built a strong platform there. But how has it changed? How has it affected you?
I'll take a minute to plug Broadridge's response here. I think our company had just such an exceptional response to COVID, and as an associate, being able to kind of continue operating with, I don't want to say there wasn't any disruption, but we had very clear communication early on. We had an understanding of how to react and respond and continue doing business given the current circumstances. I was really blown away by that. That includes our HR response, our technology offerings. I mean, you imagine when you have I don't know what the current number is, 14,000 employees, that, a large portion of them suddenly go to working remotely. The infrastructure has to be able to bear that burden. And, that was relatively seamless. So all of these things made me feel very good about working for a company that was able to respond quickly to a concern like this. And that nimbleness, I will tie in what Sean said here around, the change in the car buying experience. I mean, to have such a disruption in what you're used to, and to have it occur in a way that, you never thought this is how you would buy a car, but it works. And it's something that allows you to get the product that you need without, all the extra steps or all the extra interactions that aren't necessarily worthwhile. And I think of the way that Broadridge responded to its associates in response to COVID, and how they were able to pivot very quickly in the way that, you think of all the different aspects that had to come together to make that possible. If we take that same thinking and apply it to the way that we're delivering any business solution, this is iteration, this is MVP, this is all the, new ways that you can do this. It's what makes a startup in its nature very effective, in that you have a small team who is empowered and enabled to do whatever they need to do to solve problems. I think we're seeing larger businesses be able to adopt those same approaches. And that's really where all of this starts to come together, right? Can a business deliver this value, and whatever that challenge is, whatever the new way is that it needs to happen, it's the agility of that offering.
Great. And I know B. Cameron wants to ask a last question, Sean. So let me just get that to go over to B. Cameron.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, we were talking about all the stakeholders, and one thing we did not touch upon is DevSecops, and how does DevSecops factor into this mix, and especially now in this context of this pandemic era?
I would love to have Daniel talk a little bit about this as well in real practice as he sees it as well. But from our level, I think it's pervasive in that SEC is part of everything. And you have to think about it in every stage, every tool, every aspect of the software delivery process. It's not just about a task that you're looking after security once the software has been delivered, but you have to look at security at the get-go, from who's building it, who's actually, what processes did the code go through, is the artifacts through the different stages secure as it goes along. So it's your platforms you're using, it's the who's accessing what and doing what coding at what time. So it's all the way down to that, plus things like what packages are we using, so being able to security scan it and ensure that all the steps of the software making process is secure. And that is about securing the platform. It's about securing the workloads. It's about securing it with the right access at the right time. It's ensuring that you have the right policies along the way, that people can't change the way the software has been made and infiltrate something there. It's about ensuring that where it's being released is secure. And it's about ensuring that you have a progressive delivery style to your features, so that once you put a feature out into the market, you also have quickly the ability to shut it down if you find some sort of error or challenge along the way. And to package all of that up, that security everywhere disposition that a company needs to have, is to be able to say, when and God forbid something bad happens, do I have audit-ready pipelines from the idea and all the way through till the end? Can I look at everything that happened in between to ensure that each stage of the software was tested, secure as it went along the way? That disposition is, to me, DevSecops. It's everywhere, pervasive. So it's how we think about it, and we inject security capabilities at CloudBees into every aspect of our products and tools, from our product to tools to platforms to people. And
Daniel, why don't we just, we're at the top of the hour, so Daniel, why don't you finish it out?
Absolutely. I think of the security aspect as relatively simplistic. I don't mean to oversimplify what's involved. Sean mentioned a lot of the different aspects of this that are critical to being successful. But I think of security as, just another component of this. They're a team, they're, the offering of security. You have to have a seat at the table, right? And whether you're talking about developer needs or operational needs, infrastructure needs, security needs, the business needs, all of those aspects need to be able to be included in your offering. And I think DevSecops and the security component need to be able to plug right into whatever those pipelines are. So you have that observability into that process and everything that's going on. So I could speak a lot about this, but it's just another player that needs to have a seat at the table, and making sure that they're able to engage is critical.
Great. Well, I want to thank our guests for joining us today on this live stream from DevOps World. Sean Ahmed, Senior Vice President and General Manager, Software Delivery Automation Group at CloudBees, and Daniel Ritchie, Distinguished Engineer at Broadridge, and my esteemed colleague, B. Cameron Gain from the New Stack. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and enjoy DevOps World.
Thanks for having us, Alex.
Yeah, thanks.
You
Thank
bet.
you.